All right, ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, and the legal legend, Mike Davis joins the show. Royce missed the stinger. Put him on blast. Mike Davis, you're here to put someone on blast. I don't really care about the Trump. We've talked about the Trump indictment allegations. I care about these recordings of Joe Biden. I care about your former boss, Chuck Grassley, dropping this bombshell last night, saying, "Yo, we got the recordings." Is Chuck Grassley lying? Is he bluffing?
Chuck Grassley is the king of oversight. He's been the king of congressional oversight for many decades. He's our home state senator from Iowa. I've worked for him twice, and I can assure everyone that if Chuck Grassley says he has something, it's actually understated. And what Chuck Grassley has is there is very credible whistleblower evidence for a whistleblower who the FBI paid $200,000 over 10 years. So this is obviously a credible whistleblower that the FBI since 2017 has sat on evidence, has hid evidence that then Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter took $10 million in bribes from Burisma and got Ukraine, changed American policy, had the Ukrainian president fire the prosecutor in Ukraine who was investigating Burisma and the Bidens for corruption. So the Bidens get this $10 million. Biden calls over to the president of Ukraine. Biden is in charge of Ukraine. Obama put Biden in charge of Ukraine. And of course, Biden screwed it up like he screwed up everything. But the Biden said, if you want your $1 billion in U.S. aid, you're going to fire this prosecutor. And this is on tape. Remember, Biden bragged about this when this happened. He failed to. He's so stupid. He bragged about this, and he's so stupid that he got recorded apparently by this Burisma agent who was also a Russian. This Burisma executive who was apparently a Russian agent. So he got.
Whoa! Stop! What, you're telling me the Russians have these tapes?
That's possible. I mean, that is quite possible. I mean, that's the issue. There are 17 tapes, 15 with Hunter, 2 with Joe Biden, and Joe Biden got tapes apparently transacting this foreign bribe. And so the FBI apparently has done nothing about this since 2017. Bill Barr says he sent it to David Weiss, the U.S. attorney in Delaware. Was there any follow-up? I mean, you have allegations that a president of the United States could be corrupted. A presidential candidate is corrupted by a foreign bribe. This is $10 million from Ukraine. James Comer also has $6 million in illegal corrupt Chinese payments to the Biden family in just one of 11 bank accounts that they've been able to go through. So what are in the other 10 bank accounts? That's $16 million that Biden and his family have allegedly taken in foreign bribes and corruption. And that's just with two of the 12 bank accounts. This is a cover-up by the FBI. They've been covering up for Joe Biden since 2017. This is election interference again. They covered up for Hillary in 2016 with the blaming Trump for the Russian collusion Crossfire Hurricane investigation when Hillary got caught with her illegal home server as Secretary of State, with our nation's most classified secrets hacked by our worst enemies, maybe Russia, and evidencing the Clinton Foundation's pay-for-play foreign bribery and corruption scheme. So they blame Trump, say that this is Russian collusion. So if Russia did hack this server and made it public before the 2016 election, Hillary can say this was a dirty political trick by Trump. And you say, that's crazy, Mike. How can you make up such a thing? That's what they did in 2020. Remember, Hunter Biden's laptop got discovered. The New York Post, America's oldest newspaper, was ready to report on it before the 2020 election. So 51 intel goons colluded with the CIA and maybe the Justice Department to say that this was a Russian disinformation campaign. And that if the American people, polling shows that the American people would have known what's on that laptop, Biden would not be in the White House now. 2024, Biden gets caught taking a $10 million foreign bribe from as the vice president. Biden's caught with his own classified records. Trump had the declassified Crossfire Hurricane records. So what do? They raid Trump to get back the damning Crossfire Hurricane records back in August that they had no right to take. He had the right to have those under the Presidential Records Act. They're charging him with espionage, which doesn't even apply to a former president's handling of his presidential records. And the timing of this is so obvious. They did this indictment when this whistleblower evidence came out of this $10 million Ukraine bribe, Burisma bribe to the Bidens. And it's amazing that the Biden Justice Department, Merrick Garland, is so concerned about Donald Trump's presidential records that he has in the office of the former president in Mar-a-Lago, funded by Congress, secure office space, staff with security clearances, Secret Service protection, very secure, but they don't seem to be concerned at all about Biden's 5 stashes of stolen classified records, moved several times, accessed by a Chinese agent in his garage next to his Corvette. And there's evidence from Miranda Devine at the New York Post that Hunter Biden actually may have used this stolen classified information to get his millions in foreign corruption for the Bidens, including a 22-point email to Burisma where Hunter all of a sudden put away his crack pipe and his paintbrush and became a geopolitical expert on Ukraine. I wonder where he got that information.
You could make a small fortune selling crack pipe paintbrushes, right? If you just put them together, right? Hunter Biden would buy a lot of them. Got a little bit of spare cash around after he's done paying the alimony to the kid that the Bidens won't ever acknowledge. But remember, decency is back in the White House. Mike, what if decency wasn't back in the White House? I would like to ask you a question here on the spot. And I'd like to compliment Mike because he would never do it himself. He would never talk so illustriously about himself as in his history. But Mike Davis worked with Chuck Grassley in order to get the entire Supreme Court nominated, the Trump appointees to the Supreme Court nominated. The reason we have a conservative Supreme Court, like a slight right lean on the conservative Supreme Court, is because of Mike. Mike is called upon by some of the most powerful people in Washington to get the job done when it counts, and Mike Davis does it. He's a proper hatchet man, and those hatchets are sharp, baby. So what if somebody called on you to run the Joe Biden impeachment? What if somebody called on you to say, hey, listen, we finally have these tapes. I believe you, and I believe your old boss. I believe that the tapes exist and that there is evidence of bribery. I can also read the Constitution and see that bribery means high crimes, right? And that rises to the threshold of an impeachment. Now, we have a lot of members of Congress that are suddenly starting to sign on to these impeachment inquiries into Joe Biden. They bring you in, and they say, Mike, we want you to be one of our legal advisors on an impeachment inquiry for Joe Biden. How would you go about it?
I would say only if Ben Johnson came and became my deputy, and then I would do it.
I'll do PR for it. I'll do the memes for it.
Let me just say this, Ben. We're talking about political hatchet men. Let's talk about Jack Smith, who is the political hatchet man who Garland brought in to provide cover so Biden and Garland can indict Trump for this non-crime of a former president having his presidential records in the office of former president, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act. Jack Smith was brought in to take out Bob McDonnell, the Virginia governor, Republican Virginia governor, who was a very likely Republican presidential contender. And he would have been a grave threat to the Democrats. And so Jack Smith was brought in and brought this Jack Smith used to be the head of the public integrity section appointed by Eric Holder back in 2010. And Jack Smith brought this bogus indictment against Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, went to trial, got him convicted, destroyed his life, destroyed his political career. It goes up to the Supreme Court. He got overturned by the Supreme Court 8-0. It would have been 9-0, but Justice Scalia passed away. It is very hard to get a criminal conviction overturned by the Supreme Court. I clerked on the Supreme Court. I'm aware how it works. It is nearly impossible to get a criminal conviction overturned unanimously, from Justice Sotomayor to Justice Thomas, right? That is the spectrum there. And Justice Ginsburg to Justice Alito. That is the spectrum. It is very hard to get a criminal conviction overturned in that way. And Jack Smith found the way. Jack Smith is a political hack. His wife produced a documentary for the Obamas, paid for a documentary for the Obamas. She donated $1,000, maybe from their joint account, maybe not, who knows, for Joe Biden's presidential campaign in 2020. This is a bogus legal theory. I stayed up pretty late last night and did a lot of legal research and reread this indictment of Trump, Jack Smith and Garland and Biden's indictment of Trump. It is legally deficient, flawed on its face. It's, first of all, the Presidential Records Act, not the Espionage Act, controls the former president's handling of his presidential records. And they just completely ignore that in this indictment. They also ignore the fact that even if President Trump, even if the Espionage Act somehow applies here, they're not even alleging that President Trump intended to harm the United States at all. That's not in here at all. And there's an opinion from Judge Ellis in the Eastern District of Virginia that says you have to allege harm to the United States they have to prove harm to the United States in order to win an espionage conviction under this subsection that they're charging. And they're not even alleging it, let alone any evidence that President Trump intended any harm to the United States by having his presidential records. They want to put President Trump in jail for the rest of his life for simply retaining what they call national defense information records, right? That's their weasel way around the classification issue of President Trump declassified these records. They're going to say that even if a former president declassified his records and has them, that's somehow an Espionage Act violation because it's national defense information. They're not even charging him with sharing this information. They're simply charging him for retaining this information, which he's allowed to retain under the Presidential Records Act. This is a bogus political hit on President Trump, and it may require the Supreme Court again to overturn Jack Smith again because of this bogus legal theory. This is an obvious political hit, and all these people clutching their pearls about President Trump having his presidential records in the office of former president, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act. Where the hell is their outrage about Joe Biden having 5 stashes of stolen classified records, including from the Senate, which there's no excuse for that. Those have to be in a SCIF, that he actually may have used to corruptly secure millions for every sleazebag, scumbag Biden, except for the 4-year-old granddaughter who he doesn't claim.
Mike, you're one of the best, but you're not going to weasel out of my question. You won't do it. How would these charges rise to, I mean, that's, of course, important context for today, and we're going to replay that clip when we go live to cover the Trump arraignment later today. But really quickly, would this rise to the level of impeachment, this bribery scandal, based on the evidence that your old boss brought to the floor of the Senate yesterday? How would you structure this?
Ben, there is no question that if that evidence is true from that whistleblower, that then Vice President Joe Biden took $10 million in foreign bribes for himself and his son Hunter and changed U.S. policy, there is no question that the House of Representatives must impeach him for high crimes and misdemeanors, and the Senate must remove him because he is clearly compromised as the president of the United States. There is evidence that Joe Biden and his family have taken at least $16 million from Chinese and Ukrainian oligarchs. Where are the 2 biggest trouble spots in the world right now? They spent $10 million on the Bidens in Ukraine. Biden has sent them $200 million of U.S. taxpayer money now. Joe Biden was withholding $1 billion in U.S. aid at the time if the Ukrainian president did not fire the Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating Burisma and the Bidens for corruption. It doesn't get more foreign bribery and corruption than that. If any of this evidence is true, he needs to be impeached. And the FBI director and these officials in the FBI, the Attorney General, they need to be impeached too for covering this up.
Go after the entire rat's nest. Yes. Follow Mike Davis on his Twitter account. You have to follow on days like today. Ladies and gentlemen, if you go on twitter.com and if you click follow on one account, follow on Mike's account. So important for context, today, ladies and gentlemen, and support his work at the Article 3 Project. Mike, Godspeed.
Thank you, Ben.